Welcome everyone to part 1 of this Blender tutorial series where we will be creating this Summer Beverage scene. So in this Blender tutorial series, we will be creating this Summer Beverage scene right here. And I will be using the Cycles render engine for this tutorial because Cycles is much more realistic than Eevee, and it'll also work a lot better for like all the little water droplets and the ice material and the other glass materials. Now if you'd like to help support me and this channel, then you can purchase the tutorial files on my Gumroad store, and you can also get the tutorial files if you join my Patreon page. So checking out my Gumroad store and Patreon page are great ways to help support me and this channel. And you can also check out the YouTube memberships. So if you click on that join button down there next to the subscribe button, if you join my memberships, then you'll be helping to support the channel each month, and you'll get some cool perks here on YouTube. And one more thing before we continue with this part, I want to give a huge thanks to this video's sponsor, Blender Grid. Blender Grid is an easy to use render farm specifically designed for Blender. I've used the service and I highly recommend it. Upload your Blender file or a zip file with the blend file and textures. You can change the render settings on the website before rendering. Blender Grid will let you know the cost before you start the render. You can even choose when you want the render to finish if you're on a tight deadline. While it renders, you can check the rendered frames to make sure everything is rendering properly. Once it finishes, just download the files and compile the frames in a video editor. Use the link in the description to get $20 of render credit on your first render. Alright, so now let's go over all the resources that you'll need to collect before we start the tutorial. And I will have all the links in the video description to all of the different resources. Alright, so the first one here is an HDRI, and this is the Simon's Town Rocks, and this is a free HDRI from polyhaven.com, and I'm going to be downloading the 1K version and the HDR version, and you can just download that. So again, link is in the description, and we are going to be using this to get some nice realistic lighting for our scene. And then I'm also going to be downloading a second HDRI, so this is the Delta 2 HDRI, and I'm going to be downloading the 4K version of this HDRI, and I'll download the HDR version, and then I will download this. Now why I'm using a second HDRI is because we are going to be using these clouds here in the background of the final scene. So the other HDRI is going to be used for the lighting, but then this HDRI is going to be used in the actual background, so you'll actually be able to see these clouds in the background. And I'll show you how to set that all up later in the tutorial. And then I am downloading the 4K version just so that we have a little bit of a higher quality texture, but if you want to, you could just download the 1K if you want to go for a smaller file size. Alright, the next resource that I'm going to be using is this Surface Imperfections 011, and this is a free texture from Ambient CG. So I am going to be downloading the 4K JPEG. If you don't want to download a texture of that high quality, you could just go with like the 2K texture, but I'm going to be downloading the 4K JPEG, and we're going to be adding this onto the glass to make it look like it's a little bit wet and make it look like there's a little bit of water on the glass. Now for the sand texture on the ground, I'm going to be downloading this Ground 033, and again, this is a free texture from Ambient CG, and I'm going to be downloading the 4K JPEG. And so we're going to be putting this on the ground to kind of make it look like the drink is kind of sitting there, maybe on the beach or on the sand. And then the glass and the drink and the ice cubes and everything else in the scene is going to be sitting on this piece of wood. And so for the material for that piece of wood, I'm going to be downloading this Wood 058. Again, this is a free texture from ambientcg.com. I really like the textures on Ambient CG. They're very high quality. So I'm going to be using this Wood 058, and I will be again downloading the 4K JPEG version. And then over here on pixabay.com, I'm going to be downloading this free orange texture, and we are going to be putting this orange texture on the slices of oranges. So again, it's a free texture. I do believe you need to make an account with Pixabay, but you can just create a free account and then you can just click on free download, and I'm going to download the highest quality JPEG version, and then you can just download this. And then for the orange, which is sitting in the background, and the orange peel around the orange slices, I'm going to be using my procedural orange material. So links in the description if you'd like to watch this tutorial and create the procedural orange peel material, or if you'd like to help support me and this channel, then you can purchase this procedural material on my Gumroad store, and you also get access to my procedural materials if you join my Patreon page. So that would be a great way to help support the channel by purchasing this procedural material, and then you can use it in this tutorial, or you can just head over to the tutorial and learn how to create it yourself with my procedural orange peel tutorial. And then for the ice which is inside the drink and also the ice which is sitting on the side of the drink, I'm going to be using my procedural ice material. So again, I have a tutorial on how to create this procedural material, so you can check that out with the link in the description, so you can do the tutorial and learn how to create the procedural ice material. Or if you'd like to help support me and this channel, then you can also purchase this procedural material on my Gumroad store and then use it in the tutorial. Now, as we're doing the tutorial, if you want to see what buttons I'm pressing, my screencast keys are going to be right here, down here in the corner, so that you can see what buttons I'm pressing during the tutorial. So the first thing that I'm going to do is double tap the A key to select everything, and then I want to delete everything, so I'm going to hit the X button, and then I'm just going to click on delete. And then also, as I mentioned at the beginning of this tutorial, I am going to be using the Cycles render engine, and I would recommend using Cycles because it'll work a lot better for the different glass materials, and also Cycles is much more realistic. So on the render engine here, if you go over to the render properties, I'm going to be using Cycles. So I always like to save my Blender file at the very beginning, so let's do that. So you can just press Ctrl S, or you can click on File and then click on Save As. So I will just save this Blender file in a folder on my computer, and I'm going to rename it to summerbeverage.blend, and then I will just click on Save As. So now, as we're working on the project, you can just press Ctrl S every now and then, just press Ctrl S, and that'll save the Blender file. So to start off, we are going to be creating the glass or the cup which the beverage is in. So I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to go right here to Mesh, and I'm going to add a circle. And then kind of right above me, you can see right when you add the circle, there's that Add Circle setting. If you click right here to open this up, I'm going to just leave this at the default of 32. So on the vertice count here, I'm just going to leave that at 32. That is the default, so the vertices should already be at 32. I just want to double check that just to make sure it was at 32. And then let's press the 1 on the numpad, and that's going to hop me over to the front view. So I'm now going to press the Tab key to go into edit mode, and we're going to start modeling this. So I'm going to press S to scale, and I'm just going to scale it up a little bit. I just want to make it a little bit bigger, and then I want to make this thicker and bring it up. So I'm going to press the E key, and the E key is going to extrude this, and then let's hit the Z key, and that is going to bring it up on the Z axis. And we're just going to make a little lip there, so just place it right about there. So I'm now going to press E to extrude. We're going to extrude that up again, and I will hit Z to bring it up on the Z axis, and I'll just bring that up to about there. And then I will press S to scale, and we're going to scale this way down, and I will also press G to grab and then bring it down on the Z axis and make that a little bit smaller. And then let's press E to extrude again, and I can actually click and hold with my mouse wheel and then let go to constrain it to the Z axis, and I'm going to make that a bit bigger, bring that up a bit, and then click to place it there. Then I can press S to scale, and we're going to scale that down, and I think I also need to press G to grab and then bring it down on the Z axis just a little. I'll press E to extrude again. We're going to bring this up on the Z axis one more time, and then I will press S to scale, and we'll scale that down. And then I'll press E to extrude, and we will bring this up on the Z axis, and I think I will just scale that slightly more down. And then I'll press E to extrude again. Let's hit Z to bring it up on the Z axis, place it there, and then I can press S to scale, and we will scale that up a bit. And then again, E to extrude, hit Z to bring it up on the Z axis, place it about there, and then I'll scale it up again. And we'll place that one about there. E to extrude again, we'll bring it up on the Z axis, place it there, and then I will press S and we will scale that up again. And E to extrude, we're going to bring that up on the Z axis, and then we're going to kind of just scale this up a little bit, but not quite as much now. And then I'll press E to extrude again, we're going to hit Z to bring it up on the Z axis, and I'll make this one farther, so bring it up a bit farther, and then I'll press S, and we're going to scale that down a bit. So it's going to start to come in, and then right at the end here, kind of on the top lip, it'll come out a bit. So I'll press E to extrude again, click and hold with your mouse wheel to constrain it to the Z axis, place it there, and then I will scale it down just a little. And then I'll press E to extrude again, we'll bring it up on the Z axis, and then I can press S to scale, and we will scale that up a little bit. And we're almost done. E to extrude again, bring it up on the Z axis, just like that, and then I can press S to scale, and we'll scale that up a little. Alright, now I want this part right here to be the widest part. So what I'm going to do is hold down the Alt key and then just select this loop of vertices. So if you hold down the Alt key and then select right there in between the loop, that is going to select the loop of vertices. And then I can press S to scale. Let's scale that up a little bit more. I can hold down the Alt key and select that loop of vertices, and I'll press S to scale. We'll scale that up a bit, and then Alt and select that loop of vertices, and I will scale that up a little bit as well. And then just to make this a little bit more round and smooth, I want to add a loop cut in here. So to add a loop cut in here, I'm going to press Control R. So press Control R and then move your mouse over until you can see that yellow line there. And I'm going to left click and then right click so it's in the center. So we've now added a loop cut there. And then I can press S to scale and we will scale that up. And sorry if I didn't mention this earlier, but I held down the Z button and I moved my mouse over to the wireframe view. You can also just click right here to go into wireframe. You could do this in solid view if you want to, but I like to do this in the wireframe view. I just think it's a bit easier. But we're now finished with that basic modeling. So I'm going to hold down the Z button, go back into solid view and let go of the Z button. And we now have a basic cup there. So I'm going to press Control S again to save. And let's also hit the Tab key to go back into object mode. Now you can see that this cup here is very blocky, and so I want to smooth it out and subdivide it. So to do that, I'm going to click right over here on the modifier properties, and then right here we can click on add modifier, and I'm going to go right down here under generate, go way down, and we're going to add the subdivision surface modifier. And then right here on the subdivision surface modifier, I want the viewport and render both to be set to 2, and that way it is nice and smooth. And then using the object context menu, I can shade smooth. So I use the right click select, so I hit the W key, but you can just right click and then click on shade smooth. Or you can also click on object right up here, and you can go right down here and click on shade smooth. Alright, so that's looking much more smooth now, but if I zoom in here, you can see that the glass doesn't have any thickness, and that's not very realistic, so I want to add some thickness to the glass. So to do that, I'm going to click on Add Modifier, and we're going to go here under Generate, and we're going to go way down, and we're going to actually go right above the subdivision surface, and we're going to add the Solidify. So if you zoom in here to the edge of the glass, you can see that the Solidify modifier is adding thickness to the glass. Now I want the Solidify modifier to actually come first because I want it to give it some thickness before it subdivides it. So I want the Solidify to be activated first. So to switch this, I can just click right here where these little dots are, and I can click and drag, and I'm going to bring the Solidify modifier up here before the subdivision surface. Now I want to give some more thickness to this, so on the thickness value right here, I'm just going to drag this up, and I can also hold down the Shift key and I can drag that value, and I'm actually going to make it a negative value because I want it to be thicker inside. So I'm going to drag the thickness value and just make that a bit thicker so it's thick inside the glass. And also one thing that I want to do real quick, this timeline here, we're not going to be using this, so I want to get rid of the timeline just so that I have a little bit more space to work with. So I'm going to hover my mouse right here when that crosshair appears, and I can click and then hold down my mouse and drag up, and then drag down, and the arrow is pointing down, and I can let go, and that'll just close the timeline. Let's press Control S again to save. Now if I hold down the Z button and go over to wireframe and then let go, you can see that solidify. So if I zoom in there, you can see that everything is kind of doubled and it has kind of a wall there. And that is what I want for most of the glass, but right down here, you can see that it's also giving the glass some thickness right here. And so there's actually a big hollow area right there in the bottom of the glass. And I don't want that because this here needs to be solid. That's how they are in the real world. The bottom of the glass is solid, and then it's just open right up here where the liquid is. So what I want to do is apply the Solidify modifier, and then we can delete the extra faces in here. We will just fill a face right there, and that way all the glass in here is going to be solid, but then it'll be hollow in here where the liquid is. So I'll just press Control S again to save, and then what you're going to do to apply the Solidify is just click on this drop down, and then you can click on Apply. You can also just hover your mouse over the Solidify and press Control A. That is the shortcut key. So click on this, click on Apply, or you can press Control A to apply that. All right, so now if I press Tab to go into edit mode, you can see that's been applied, and so that is actual geometry now. So now I just want to delete the faces that are right in there. So to do this, let's press Tab to go into edit mode, and then I'm going to just zoom into the cup. So we're going to zoom way in here. Now to be able to preview this a little bit better, right over here on the subdivision surface modifier, I'm going to click on this button right here, and that is just going to hide the subdivision surface from our view. So now what I want to do is just select to this loop of vertices. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and then just select that loop of vertices. All right, so I now want to delete that loop of vertices. So I'm just going to press X to delete, and we want to delete the vertices. All right, so now we're going to navigate down here, and I'm going to zoom out, and this is the bottom of the glass. You can see at the bottom of the glass is hollow as well. So what I'm going to do is just hold down the Alt key, and then we're going to select that loop of vertices right there. So it is the inner loop, and I'm going to press X to delete, and we are going to delete the vertices. So what I've done is I've deleted a loop right here, and then also inside there, I deleted a loop in there. So now this little inner part here is separated from the rest of the vertices. So now that it's separated, I can hover my mouse over these vertices and I can press the L key, and that is going to select all the linked vertices. So you can see these are linked together. So if I press G to grab, just kind of move them over, you can see here are the extra faces that were created with the solidify. But I don't want them, so I can just press X to delete, and we can just delete the vertices. So now we just need to fill back in these holes that we made. So I'm first going to hold down the Alt key and then just select that loop of vertices just like that. And then I just want to fill a face in here. So I'm going to press the F key, and the F key will fill a face. And then I'm going to do the same thing inside here. So let's just navigate inside the cup, and I'm going to zoom in here, and then I will hold down the Alt key and just select that loop of vertices. And then again, I can press the F key, and that is going to fill a face. So now we're just going to go right back here and click on this button, and that is going to turn on the subdivision surface modifier so that we can preview it. All right, so that's looking pretty good, but you can see there is some stretching right there in the center of the cup. So what I'm going to do, if I click on this to hide it, we still have this face selected. So I'm going to press the I key, and the I key is going to make an inset inside the face. And I'm just going to scale this down, click and place it there, and then I can turn on this again. So click on this button here to preview the subdivision surface, and you can see now that stretching is very, very small. You're not really able to see it that well. Now I do want to sharpen up a few of the edges because the subdivision surface modifier will smooth out any edges. So you can see right here that needs to be sharper, and then also I want to sharpen up the bottom down there. So I'm going to press Tab again to go into edit mode, and I'm just going to zoom in here, and I want to add some loop cuts in here to sharpen this up. So I'm going to press Control R. Control R is the shortcut key to add a loop cut, and I'm going to hover my mouse right about here when that loop cut appears, and then I can click. I'm just going to left click and then drag up. We're going to bring that up pretty close and then left click again. And you can see if you kind of zoom over here to the side, it's kind of sharpening up that lip there. So I want to do the same thing on the other side. So inside the cup, I'm going to press Control R to add a loop cut, and then I can just left click and drag up, and you can see as I drag it closer and closer, it's going to sharpen that edge. So I just want to bring it up pretty close, but I don't want the vertices to be overlapping. So just about there, and then click to place that. All right, so now that lip there is much more sharp. So I want to do the same thing on the bottom. So I'm going to navigate right down here. We're going to go to the bottom of the glass, and I'm going to press Control R to add a loop cut. Let's click right there and then drag down and click to place it there. And then again, Control R, we'll click to add a loop cut there, drag up, and then click to place it there. So if I tab to go back into object mode, you can see that is much sharper now. It is still round, but it's much more sharp there on the edges. So that's looking pretty good. Let's press Control S again to save the project. All right, so I'm now going to add a camera, and we're going to point the camera right at the glass. So to add a camera, we can press Shift A. Shift A will bring up the add menu, and I'm going to go right down here, and we're going to add a camera. All right, so we've added the camera, but it's added the camera right down here. So what I'm going to do is press the 1 on the numpad, and that is going to take me to the front view. And then I want to bring the camera right here. So to do this, I'm going to press Control Alt Numpad 0, and Control Alt Numpad 0 is going to bring the camera to our view. Now I want to make this a square image, so to change the ratio, to change the aspect ratio, I'm going to click over on the output properties, and you can see there's a resolution X and a resolution Y. Now, if you make this a smaller resolution, then it's going to render faster, but if you make this a bigger resolution, it'll be higher quality, but it will also take longer to render. I want it to be a very high quality image, so I'm going to set the resolution X to 2560 and the resolution Y right here to 2560. So that is about a 2K resolution image. If you want to, though, if you want to make it smaller, what you can do is you can click and then drag down and then let go, and that'll change both of the values at the same time. You could just use like 1080, so you could type in like 1080, just 1080, or you could also just use like 1920, so 1920, but I want this to be a very high resolution image, so I'm going to use a resolution of 2560 by 2560. Now I want to point this directly at the glass, so if you select the camera, you can just click right here to select the camera. You can press the G key, and the G key is going to move the object. So I'm just going to bring the camera right about there so it's more in the center. And then I also want to turn the focal length of the camera up, so I'm going to click right here on the object data properties, and this is going to go to the camera settings. Make sure you have the camera selected when you do this, and you can see right here there is a focal length. So the default is set to 50, but I want to turn this up because I want to make things look a bit more flat. So right here on the focal length, on the camera's focal length, I'm going to change this to 100. So change that to 100, and you can see it looks like everything's zooming in. So what we need to do is just kind of bring the camera back a little bit. So that's pretty easy to do. Just make sure the camera is selected, and then you can press G to grab. And then what you can do is you can double tap the Z key, and that way we can bring the camera in and out. So I'm just going to bring the camera much farther back like that, and then I can also bring it up just a little. So that's good for now, but we can always move the camera around later on if we need to. Alright, so we are now going to be adding the HDRI lighting. So let's click right over here, and this is going to go to the world properties, and then if there isn't already a world, just click on the new button to add a new world. So then right here on this color, I don't want to just have one color, I want to instead add in the environment texture. So we're going to click right here on this yellow dot, and then we're going to go right down here and change it under texture to environment texture. And then we can just click on open to open up the texture. So again, link is in the description if you'd like to download the same HDRI that I'm using. It's a free HDRI from polyhaven.com. So here's the HDRI. So I'm just going to click on this, and then I'm going to click on open image. All right, so we've opened that up. So I'm now going to hold down the Z button, move my mouse up into the rendered view, and then let go of the Z button, and we can preview how that's looking. Now I don't want the camera to render all of the stuff around here, I just want the camera to render what it can see, and that'll speed up the preview times. So inside the camera's view, I'm going to press Ctrl B. So press Ctrl B, and then you can just click and drag a box around the camera and let go, and that way it'll only render what the camera can see. Now there is one more thing that I want to do to the lighting. I'm going to click right over here on the render properties, and then I'm going to go right down here, and I'm going to open up the color management. So right here on the view transform, just make sure that this is set to filmic, and then right here on the look, I'm going to change this to a very high contrast, and this is going to pop out the colors and make them look more saturated and a bit more contrasty. Alright, so now what I want to do is rotate the HDRI because I want the sun to be pointed at a different angle. If I click with my middle mouse wheel to go out of the camera view, you can see there's the sunlight and it's shining on the cup from this direction, but I want to change the rotation of the HDRI, and then the sun will be shining on the cup in a little bit of a different direction. So to do this, let's actually go right up here and click on the shading tab, and then I will press the 0 on the numpad to go into the camera view of the 3D space, and I can hold down the Z button and go back up to the rendered view. So then right here, over here, this is the shader editor, but I want to click on this object here, and I don't want to edit the object shader nodes, I want to edit the world nodes instead. So I'm going to change that to world right there, and you can see here is the Simon Town Rocks HDRI, and then this background here, this is the background of the world. Now to edit the nodes, I am going to be using the Node Wrangler add-on. So if you don't have the Node Wrangler add-on enabled, you can just click right here on edit, and then you can open up the preferences. And then in the user preferences, you can go right over here to the add-ons tab, and then go right up here to the search, and you can search for the Node Wrangler add-on. So just check mark the Node Wrangler add-on right there, and I'll show you how to use it in the video. So then I can just close the user preferences. Alright, so now that the Node Wrangler add-on is enabled, I'm going to click on the Simon's Town Rocks HDRI, and then just make sure it's selected, and I can now press Ctrl T. And when I press Ctrl T, that's using the Node Wrangler feature, and it's going to add the texture, coordinate, and mapping nodes. So we can use this mapping node to change the rotation rotation of the HDRI. So I want to rotate the HDRI around on the Z-axis. So what we're going to do right here is we're going to go to the rotation Z, and we are going to rotate this. So I can just drag this value, this Z value, and you can see it's rotating that around. So we can just change this to whatever lighting we like, because you can see if I keep on rotating this, now you can see the lighting is kind of behind the cup, but that's not what I want. So I'm going to keep on rotating this, and I actually have a specific value that I want to use. I want to use a rotation Z value of 331. So on the rotation Z, I will type in 331, and now the light is kind of shining here from the side, and I think that looks really nice. And that way there'll be a bit more contrast. There'll be kind of a shadow here, but then it will be bright over here, and I think that will look really nice. And there will also be some nice reflections on the side of the cup. And then later on in the tutorial, we will edit the world nodes more because I want to use the other HDRI as well, but we will do that later on. For now, I'm just going to leave it like this. So I can actually just go right back over here to the layout on the workspaces. And then I'm going to hold down the Z button, and we're going to go back to the solid view and let go of the Z button. So I now want to model that little plank of wood, which is kind of acting as a table for everything in the scene. So I'm going to press Shift A. Let's go right up here to a mesh, and I'm going to add a cube. So we're going to use the cube to model the piece of wood. So I'm going to press the tab key to go into edit mode, and then I can press S to scale, and let's scale this on the Z axis, and we're going to scale this much smaller. I'll just zoom into the cube here, and I'm going to scale it down a little bit more on the Z axis. So we'll scale it with S and then press Z to scale it on the Z axis. And then I can press the tab key to go back into object mode. So I can now press G to grab and then hit Z to bring it down on the Z axis. And we're just going to stick it right there so it is right underneath that glass there. All right, so I'm now going to press tab to go into edit mode, and I want to scale it out, but I don't want to scale it up on the Z axis. So what I'm going to do is press S to scale, and then I'm going to hit Shift Z. So by pressing Shift Z, it's not going to scale it on the Z axis, but it will still scale it on the X and Y. So I'm just going to scale it up now and make it much bigger. I'll bring it up to about that far and then just click to place that. So I can now press the tab key to go back into object mode, and then I can press G to grab, and let's hit the Y to bring it back on the Y axis, and I'm going to bring it back to about there. And I just want to leave a little bit of space there between the glass and the edge of the plank there. So I'll press 0 to go into the camera view, see how that's looking. That's looking pretty good. I do think I want the piece of wood to be a little bit thinner though, so I'm going to press tab again to go into edit mode, and I'll press S to scale, and then I will hit Z to scale it down on the Z axis and just make it slightly smaller. Click to place that, and then I can press the tab key to go back into object mode, and I can press G to grab, and let's bring this up on the Z axis, just bring it back up like that. Now I want to bevel the edges because you can see the edges are very, very sharp, and that's not very realistic. So let's bevel the edges. So I'm going to click right over here on the modifier properties, and then let's go up here, and I'm going to click on add modifier, and under generate, we're going to go right down to the second one and add the bevel modifier. So the bevel modifier is just going to smooth out those edges and add more geometry to those edges. So on the segments here, I'm going to turn this up higher to just like a 4, and then I also want to turn the amount down. So I'm just going to hold down the shift key and then drag this amount value, and when you hold down the shift key and drag the value, it's going to make the movements more sensitive. So I'm just going to drag this pretty small so that there's a little bit of a bevel there on the edges, just like that. And then again, using the object context menu, we can shade this smooth just like we did with this object. We're going to shade that object smooth, and now you can see there's a nice little bevel there on the edge of that piece of wood. All right, press 0 to go into the camera view, and that's looking pretty good. All right, so we're now going to be adding the wood material onto the piece of wood. So I'm just going to select the piece of wood, and then to add the material, we're just going to hop over here to the shading workspace. And so in the shading workspace, you should have the 3D view and then also the shader nodes. Now we were using the world nodes to edit the actual world nodes, but I want to click right here on world, and I'm instead going to change this to object, and that way we'll be able to edit the object's material instead of the world. So now I'm going to click on new right here to add a new material, and I can just call this wood. Now we enabled the Node Wrangler add-on earlier in this tutorial, so I'm just going to select the principled BSDF shader, and then I'm going to use a feature from the Node Wrangler to automatically set up all the textures for us. So make sure you have the principled BSDF selected, and then I'm going to press Control-Shift-T. And when you press Control-Shift-T, that is going to bring up Blender's file browser, and we can now just select the material that we want. So I've already downloaded the wood 058 from Ambient CG. So again, links in the description if you want to download the same wood material. So when you download the wood material, you're going to need to extract the zip file, and then you can go into the folder. And so in the extracted folder, there's going to be a bunch of different files, but most of these I'm not going to use. What I want to do is I want to select the color map, and then I'm going to hold down the control key, and I'm also going to select the normal GL, and then also the roughness. So now that we've selected all of those 3 image textures, we're going to click on Principled Texture Setup. And you can see that the Node Wrangler is automatically going to set up the textures for us. So what it does is it looks at the names in the textures, and it can see that this is a color map, and this is a roughness map, and this is a normal. So now if you zoom in here, you can see there is the texture. Now the UV mapping is kind of messed up, so I want to re-UV unwrap this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click right here on the UV editing workspace. And so we can use this workspace to re-UV unwrap the texture. So what I'm going to do in the 3D space here is I'm going to hold down the Z button, and I'm going to go to the material preview and then let go of the Z button. And so now we are in the material preview, and so we can actually preview how the texture is looking on the object. So you can see that it's like really stretched right here, and that's not what I want. And it's also pretty big right here. So what I'm going to do is just double tap the A key to select everything, and then right over here, this is the UV editor. But I'm going to move my mouse in the 3D space, and then in edit mode with everything selected, I'm going to press the U button. And when you press U, that is going to bring up the UV map settings. Now for an object like this, which is very square and blocky, I can use the Smart UV Project. So I'm going to click on Smart UV Project, and then I will just click on OK. And this is just going to do a very quick UV unwrap, but it works really well for these type of objects, which are just very square. And so you can see it's actually done a pretty good job, and now we can see the texture there on the sides, and it's not stretched. Now I do want to scale this up a bit more because it is a little bit large. So that's where we can edit the UVs right here in the UV editor. So I'm just going to double tap the A key, just tap the A key a few times to make sure those are selected. And then I'm going to press S to scale, and you can see when we are scaling up the UV editing, it's going to scale up the texture. So I'm just going to scale it up a bit more. And then also, I think it looks better if the grains of wood are going this way instead of this way. So in the UV editor, just hover your mouse in the UV editor. I'm going to press R, and that is going to rotate it. And then I'm going to type in 90 and then enter. That's going to rotate it over by 90 degrees. And now you can see that the grain of wood is going back and forth. And then I want the grain of wood here to be going back and forth as well, because that would make sense that it would go along with the wood. So what I'm going to do is in the 3D space, I'm going to click right here, and that's going to go to the face select. I can then just select this face right here, and you can see there is the UV editing for just that face. So then if your mouse is in the UV editor, I can press R to rotate, and then I can type in 90 and enter just to rotate that over by 90 degrees, and that's looking much better. All right, so that's good. That's all I wanted to do. So I can now just go right back over here to the shading workspace, and we can preview how that's looking. All right, so we are now going to be creating the sand, which is kind of all down here on the ground and going into the background. So I'm going to hop right back over here to the layout. So to make the sand on the ground, I'm going to press Shift S, just hold down the Shift and S button, and then I'm going to move my mouse over to cursor to world origin and then let go of the Shift and S button. And that will just ensure that this 3D cursor is in the very center of the 3D scene. So now that that's in the center there, I can press Shift A, and I'm going to go here to mesh, and I'm going to add a plane. And the plane is now added there right in the center because that's where the 3D cursor is. So wherever the 3D cursor is, that is where new objects will be added. So I'm just going to navigate kind of over here and just kind of scale out so that I can see that whole thing better. So I'm going to press S to scale, and I want to scale this up a lot bigger because this is going to go all the way into the background. So I'm just going to press S to scale again and scale that up pretty big. I'll make it even bigger, something like that. And then I'm going to press G to grab, and then I'm going to click with my mouse wheel wheel to constrain it to the y-axis, and we're just going to stick it right back there. So the camera isn't going to see anything right here, it's just going to see the stuff which is back here, so we can just move the plane back. Let's press the 0 on the numpad to go into the camera view, and that's actually pretty much perfect. Just make sure that the camera isn't able to see the ending there of that plane. So if you need to adjust this more, you can press G to grab and then hit Y to move it on the y-axis and just move it to about there. Now I want to make this sand kind of lumpy and bumpy kind of in the background. So what I'm going to do is press the tab key, and that's going to take me into edit mode. So in edit mode, you can just use the object context menu, and that's going to bring up these settings. So again, I use the right click select, so I hit the W key instead to bring up the object context menu, but you can just right click, and that's going to bring up the object context menu in edit mode. And then I want to click on the subdivide button. Now, right after you subdivide the plane, right next to me, you can see that there is the subdivide settings. If you just click on that, that is going to open it up. And then there's some different settings here. I need to move myself over a little bit. So on the number of cuts here, I want to turn this up. So I'm going to click on this little arrow here, and it's going to subdivide it more and more. So I do want it to be pretty subdivided. So I'm going to turn this up even more. So the max is 10, but I can actually just click on this to make another number, and I'm actually going to change this to like a 30, so you can just type in a number. So I'm going to type in 30 and then enter. Actually, I think I'll make that a little bit higher, more to like a 50. All right, so 50 cuts, and then I can just click on that little arrow there to hide the subdivide settings. So now that that is subdivided, we can play around with the mesh and make it a little bit bumpy to kind of make some sand hills in the background. So what I'm going to do is press the 0 on the numpad. That's going to jump me into the camera's view, and then I can just press tab to go back into object mode. So I now want to press G to grab, and then I'm going to hit Z to bring it on the Z axis, and then I will hold down the shift key to make my movements more sensitive, and I want to stick it right down there so that little piece of wood is right down there, just barely touching the sand. All right, so now we can just make the background kind of bumpy. So what I'm going to do is press tab again to go into edit mode, and then I actually want to use the vertex select. So to do that, you can just click right here on the select mode to change it to the vertex select. You can also press the 1 key on the top of your keyboard to go to the vertex select. All right, so I can now just kind of zoom in, and I just want to select a vertex, which is way back there. Now, if I press G to grab, that is just going to move the single vertex. So I'm just going to press escape to undo that. What I want to do is I want to go right here, and I want to turn on the proportional editing. So you can click on this, or you can also use the shortcut key, which is the O key. So turn on the proportional editing, and when you turn on the proportional editing, now if you press G to grab, you can see that there's that little circle there, and if you scroll your mouse wheel, that is going to make the circle bigger, and everything that is in the circle is going to be pulled along with the selection. Now that the circle is bigger, you can see that the other vertices are being pulled along with it, and so we're basically just creating this little hill here. So I'm just going to continue to do this. So in the camera view, I like to do it in the camera view because the camera is actually going to be where it's rendered. I'm just going to press G to grab and just kind of move around some of these vertices here to kind of make a hill. I'll select a vertex over here, press G to grab, and I'm just going to kind of move these around. Let's also do some over here. So select a vertex, press G to grab, and you can scroll with your mouse wheel to change the size of that. And I'm just going to make some little hills, and the hills are going to be kind of blurred in the background, so you're not going to be able to see them in tons of detail. So just kind of bring this up just by selecting some vertices and pressing G to grab, and just kind of making some little hills here and there. All right, so I can tab to go back into object mode, and that is looking pretty good. So just some very simple hills. Now you can see that it looks a little bit blocky, and that is because we need to shade it smooth. So again, using the object context menu in object mode, you can just click on shade smooth. You can also just click on object, and then you can go right down here and click on shade smooth. All right, I'm going to press 0 on the numpad again just to see how that's looking. Now, if you kind of zoom in here really close up, you can see it just looks a tiny bit blocky, and it will be kind of blurred in the background, so you're not going to be able to see it very well, but close up you might be able to see that it looks just a little bit blocky. So I'm just going to add a subdivision surface modifier on the sand. So right over here on the modifier properties, you can just click on add modifier, and then I'm going to go right down here under generate, down here the subdivision surface, and then the viewport and the render levels, I can just turn these both to 1, and now if I zoom in there, you can see see it looks more smooth, and that's very good. Let's press Ctrl S again to save the project. Alright, so I now want to add the sand texture onto this object. So just make sure the object is selected, and you can click right here to go to the shading workspace. So just make sure the ground plane is selected, and then let's click on new here to add a new material, and I can just rename this material to sand. Alright, and then just like we did with the wood material, I'm just going to use the feature from the node wrangler to have it automatically set up the material. So just select the principled BSDF, and then you're going to hit Control-Shift-T. And that's going to bring up Blender's file browser, and this time I'm going to go into the ground 033 folder. So again, links in the description if you'd like to download this free texture from Ambient CG. So once you download the texture, you can just extract the zip file, go into the folder, and we want to select the normal GL. So select the normal GL, and then hold down the Control key, and I want to also select the color and the roughness. So the normal GL, the color, and the roughness. With those all selected, I'm going to click on Principled Texture Setup, and it's automatically going to set up the texture for us. Alright, now I want to scale up the texture a lot. You can see the UV editing already looks pretty good, and that's because we added a plane, and so the plane's UV editing was already pretty good, but I just need to scale it up. So just make sure the plane is selected, and we're going to go right over here to the UV editing tab. And you can see there it is. So if I double tap the A key to select everything, you can see it's already UV unwrapped pretty nicely because it was a plane, but I just want to press the A key right here in the UV editor to select everything, and then I'm going to press S to scale, and we are going to scale this way up. And I do want to scale it up pretty big. Let's also press the 0 on the numpad so that we can see what it's looking like in the camera's perspective. And I want to scale this up pretty big because I do want it to be pretty small and have lots of detail. Let's go back over here to the shading tab. Now I want to give this sand material a little bit more bump, and so what I'm actually going to do is add in a noise texture here and put it into the bump. So I'm going to press Shift A. Let's go to the search here, and I'm going to search for a noise texture, and let's just drop the noise texture down here underneath these other textures. Now I want to use the object coordinates on the noise texture, so I'm going to take the object and I'm going to plug the object into the vector of the noise texture, and then I can Control Shift and select the noise texture to preview it. And then I want to turn the scale up, so for now I'll turn the scale up to like a 15, and then to add a lot more detail, I'm going to turn the detail level all the way to the max, which is 15. And then to add even more detail, I'm going to turn this roughness value up. So let's turn the roughness value up to like a 0.6, and that's going to add even more detail in there. And I think I want to turn the scale up even more, so let's turn the scale up to maybe like a 25. That is much better, maybe even just like a 30. That's pretty good. So I'll turn the noise texture scale up to like a 30. Alright, so I now want to plug this into the bump. So to add multiple bump maps together, what we can do is we can press Shift A, then I'm going to go to the search here, and I'm going to search for a bump node. So let's click on this bump node, and I'm going to drop it right here after the normal map. So now what I want to do is I want to take the factor right here from the noise texture, and I'm going to put the factor into the height value of the bump. And then the normal map coming from this normal can just go into the normal. So this way we are mixing multiple bumps together. So if I Control Shift and select this normal map, you can see what it looks like. And then I can Control Shift and select this bump, and you can see now there's a bunch of tiny little detail there. So I'm going to Control Shift and select the principled BSDF, and let's also move this material output back. Now this is a bit too strong. You can see it's very, very rough, so I want to turn the strength down. So on this strength right here, on this bump, this is the noise texture bump. I just want to turn the strength down to like a 0.2, so it's less strong. And then the normal map also does look kind of bumpy, so I'm going to turn the strength value here on the normal map to just like a 0.5, so it's a bit less strong, and that's looking pretty good. So we now have a really nice sand material. Let's press Control S again to save. So now let's create the material for the glass. So I'm going to click on the glass right here, and then let's click on new, and I can just rename this to glass. Now for this material, I'm not actually going to use the principled BSDF, so I'm going to select the principled shader, and then let's press X to delete it. So I actually want to use the glass shader, so let's press Shift A. I'm going to go to the search here, and I'm going to search for the glass BSDF, so the glass shader. Let's just drop it here, and then I can take this output and we're going to put that into the surface. And there we go. So we already have a really nice realistic glass shader in cycles. And also if the roughness is turned up, just make sure you turn the roughness all the way to 0 so that it isn't rough at all and it's very shiny and reflective. So press Ctrl S again to save the project, and then let's go back over here to the layout. So now what I want to do is I actually want to create the beverage or the juice or whatever type of beverage it is. I want to actually create that object inside the glass. And I want the liquid to be the same shape as the glass. So we can actually just use this glass object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Shift D, and Shift D will duplicate this object. Then I'm going to press the escape key to hop it back to its default position. So what I'm now going to do is press 1 on the numpad to go to front view, and I'm just going to press the tab key to go into edit mode. So I now just want to delete all of the vertices which are not going to be where the juice is. So I'm going to hold down the Z button, and let's go over into the wireframe view and let go. So I'm going to press the A key to deselect everything, and then I will press B for the box select, and I'm just going to drag a box around there, and then I can press X to delete, and we can delete the vertices. So we're just deleting that top area because I don't want the juice to be super tall. I just want it to come up to about there. And then let's also delete like the juice down here, because the juice isn't going to come any farther than like here, because this is a solid piece of glass and then it's hollow up here. So I'll press B for the box select. I'm just going to drag a box around these vertices, and then I can press X to delete, and I want to delete the vertices. All right, that's pretty good. And then I will hold down the Z button, go back into solid view and let go. All right, so that's looking pretty good, but this still has the thickness because we duplicated it from the glass object. So we need to delete the thickness. So what I'm going to do is press tab to go back into object mode, and then I'm going to select this glass object, and I will press H to hide it. So I'm now just going to select the liquid object, and then I will press tab to go into edit mode, and we just want to delete this first layer but not the inner layer. You can see there are basically 2 layers. So to delete the outer layer, I can just press the L key, and the L key is going to select all the linked vertices, and if you press G to grab, you can see that it's actually pulling along the other vertices with it. So I'll just right click to undo that. That is because this proportional editing is turned on, so you can just press the O key or click on that to turn it off. So I can now press G to grab, just kind of move that over, and you can see there is the extra piece that we don't need. So I can press X to delete, and we want to delete the vertices. All right, so I now just want to fill in the top and the bottom. So to fill in the top and the bottom, I'm just going to hold down the Alt key and then just select that ring of vertices, and then we're going to press the F key. So the F key is going to fill a face there. All right, that's pretty good, but you can see that it's very stretched, and that's because this is just one giant face. So to make it less stretched, I need to add more geometry in there. So I'm going to press the I key, and the I key is going to inset that face. I'm just going to scale it down a little bit and then click to place that. And then I want to do it one more time. So I'm going to press the I key again, and I'm going to scale this down and just click to place it right there. All right, that's pretty good. And then we also need to recalculate the normals. So what I'm going to do is double tap the A key to select everything. Just make sure everything is selected. And then I'm going to press Shift N, and Shift N is the shortcut key to recalculate the normals. And now that is flipped the correct direction. All right, so then right down here, we need to fill a face in here. Actually, it looks like there already is a face. So what I am going to do though is go right up here to the face select mode, or you can also press the 3 on the top of your keyboard, and I'm just going to select that face right there. So I can now press G to grab, and let's bring it down on the Z axis just a little, and also maybe just scale it down a little bit. All right, I can just press tab to go back into object mode. So let's press the 0 on the numpad, and that's going to go back into the camera's perspective. And then actually one more thing that I want to do, I want to press tab to go into edit mode, and I want to add a loop cut right up here to kind of sharpen this up. So what I'm going to do is just zoom in here, and I can press Control R. Control R will add a loop cut, and I'm going to click and then drag up and drag it up pretty close, and then click to place that just to sharpen up that edge there. So I can press 0 to go into the camera view. That's looking pretty good. So let's press the tab key to go back into object mode. And now we actually have the juice object. So I'm now going to press Alt H, and Alt H is going to unhide that object that we hid earlier, the glass object. So now if you look right in here, we have the juice inside the glass, and that is exactly what I want. And then I'm going to hold down the Z button, go up into the rendered view just to preview how that's looking. And you can see because we have multiple layers of glass, it's looking really dark. And so we actually just need to turn up the transparency. So let's press Control S again to save. And then I'm going to go right over here to the render properties. So go to the render properties, and we want to open up the light paths. So right here on the light paths, we want to open up the max bounces. So then what we can do is we can just turn up this total here. So I'm just going to click on this little arrow, and that's going to turn up the total. So basically we are allowing more bounces, and it's going to allow more transparency. So I'm going to turn that total up. That looks pretty good, but just to be on the safe side, I'll turn that up to like a 10. And also the transmission here, I'll turn that up to a 10. And this transparency level as well, I will turn that up to a 10. All right, and we also might need to turn this up even more later because we are going to be adding ice cubes inside the drink. So that's looking much better, but you can see it still does just look a little bit weird, and that is because we have some overlapping faces. So I'm going to hold down the Z button and go back into the solid view and let go. So this liquid object was duplicated from this object. And so right in here, in between the juice and the glass, there are some faces which are overlapping. So this is really easy to fix. What I'm going to do is just select the juice, and then I'm going to press the tab key to go into edit mode. And I'm just going to press the A key to make sure everything is selected. So now what I'm going to do is press 0 on the numpad to go into the camera view, and I'm also going to hold down the Z button and go up into the rendered view because I want to preview it in the rendered view. So now what we can do is we can just scale the juice down and make it a little bit thinner, and then it won't be overlapping. So what I'm going to do is press S to scale, and that's going to scale everything. And then I don't want to scale it up and down on the Z axis, but I do want to scale it on the X and Y. So to do this, I'm going to press Shift Z. So by pressing Shift Z, we are only scaling it on the X and Y, but not the Z. And then I'm just going to move my mouse in just a little, and you can see now the glass isn't looking quite as weird. So I'm just going to click to place it right there, and then I can tab to go back into object mode. So now if I hold down the Z button and go into the wireframe view, I'm going to press 1 on the numpad to go to the front view, and I'm just going to zoom in here, and I can just click right here and make sure I have the juice object selected. So if I now zoom in here, you can see that the juice is just slightly smaller than the glass. So here's the glass, and then here's the juice. Now if you need to scale it down even more, you can press tab to go into edit mode, and you can double tap the A key to select everything, and again you can press S to scale, and then you can press Shift Z, and then you can just scale it down a little bit and just make that a bit smaller than the glass. So go into object mode, you can see there's the glass and there is the juice. All right, so now if you go into the camera view, go into the rendered view, you can see that is now looking much better. Now I also want to create a separate material for the juice. So let's do that. So I'm just going to select the juice object, and then I'm going to go right over here to the shading workspace. And then what I want to do is click on this X button to get rid of this material. And then let's click on the new button to add a new material. And I can just call this juice. So for this juice material, I am going to be using the principled BSDF. So on this base color right here, I'm just going to click on the base color, and you can of course create whatever color you want for the liquid, for the drink, but I'm going to make it very bright, and then I'm going to make it a red color, and I'm going to make it a pretty saturated red color. And then I'm also going to turn this specular value all the way up to 1 so that it is more reflective. And then this roughness value, I'm going to turn all the way to 0 so that it is very reflective. Now it doesn't have any transparency right now, and so what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to mix it with the transparent shader. So I'm going to press Shift A. Let's go to the search here, and I'm going to search for the transparent shader. Let's click on this, and we're going to drop it right here. And then to mix two shaders together, I'm going to press Shift A. Let's go to the search here, and I'm going to search for the mix shader. So click on the mix shader, and I'm going to drop it right here. So we're going to plug the principled up to the bottom one, just plug that up to the bottom one. And then we are going to bring the transparent shader down, and I'm going to plug this one up to the top one. And then for the transparent color, I'm going to click on this color right here, and I am going to make it kind of a reddish color, kind of an orangey reddish color, but it's not going to be very saturated. So it's going to be very white, and it's just going to have a little bit of an orangey or reddish tint. And if you want to use the same exact color that I'm using, then you can click over on the hex value, and you can type in a hex value of FF B183. And then you can see there's this factor here, and the factor is going to change it between just the principled or just the transparent. And what I want to do is I want to change this factor to like a 0.3. So now if you zoom in there, you can kind of see through that juice, but it looks pretty red. So that's just a nice blending between the transparent and the principled. So let's go back over to the layout here, and then I'm just going to press Control S to save. And this is going to wrap it up for part 1 of the tutorial series. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you you've been enjoying the tutorial series so far, and if you'd like to watch part 2, I will throw it right up there on the end screen, and it will also be in the video description. I'll be uploading one part each day of the tutorial series. And if you'd like to help support me and this channel, then you can check out my Gumroad store and Patreon page and the YouTube memberships as well. Those are all great ways to help support me and this channel. But I hope you've been enjoying this so far, and I will see you in the next part, part 2.